paranormal. It surrounds us. It's everywhere. Tonight, you will hear from the people who live and work within these highly active locations, all in the efforts to discover America's most haunted. With your host, ghost hunter and author, Dan Terry.
Good evening, boys and ghouls. I am Dan Terry, your ghost host with the most haunted, and we're getting into one of my favorite topics. Tim Clifton was here. He'd tell you this is one of the things I'm really into. Civil War ghosts. They're all over this part of the country, all over the Midwest. They go as far out as New Mexico. I've been involved in some ghost hunts down there of Civil War ghosts. I know there was a battle down there, but it really hit from Missouri east. Illinois had a few. I think Kansas had some, but it really hit hard Missouri and east, and especially here on the towards the East Coast. Tennessee, of course. I think Kentucky had quite a few, and Maryland. And my guest is Mark, I hope I pronounced his name right, Brugg. And he has actually done a lot of research and has started the Sharpsburg Ghost Tours, Sharpsburg Civil War Ghost Tours. And he's been doing that now for 15 years. He does private tours. He does tours all year long, private tours and full regular ghost tours. And the Civil War just fascinates me. You guys remember when I was in General Harney's mansion there in Sullivan, Missouri? I got to do one incredible battlefield, and it was an area where the Union was chasing the Confederates from Kansas across the river into Arkansas. And we were out there. It was crazy. I cannot say where. It was part of the agreement because the state didn't want it talked about, but they did let us ghost hunt it. We was walking through the woods, and we could hear soldiers on both sides escorting us down the trail. When we'd stop, their footsteps would stop. Just a step or two later. And then we'd start and stop, and theirs would stop. Birds started screaming, hundreds of them. And as soon as we crossed a bridge over to the other side of the stream, dead silent. I mean, Civil War ghosts are incredible. If you ever get a chance to take the tour of some of these towns, and Sharpsburg's one, I've got to tell you, it's going to be great. You need to get in there. You need to try this because that is American history. So let me bring Mark up, because he does the tours in Sharpsburg, which was, as I understand, well, it's Antietam. It was one of the final battles, right?
So Antietam was really the first major battle, ended up a one-day battle with 23,000 missing, wounded, or dead. A cataclysmic event early in the war, so early that neither side was prepared for the amount of casualties that day. Yeah. And things improved from that point, but Antietam's really a disaster in terms of carnage, single-day carnage.
For both sides, 23,000.
Absolutely, yeah. Union, according to military historians, Union lost a few thousand more soldiers than Confederates did, but Confederates didn't have as many in the field either. Mm-hmm. So the proportions are about the same.
Wow. And so this was you say the first battle of the Civil War?
No, it's the first major battle in the Eastern Theater. I believe Vicksburg was happening a little bit earlier than that, but again, this is in the Eastern Theater. I think
Vicksburg happened all the way through the war. That place just switched back and forth.
Yeah. Yes. So
okay.
So we're in September 1862, and Robert E. Lee loses the Union Army, literally loses them, and decides to invade the North. His first invasion of the North, and then he is caught up with by virtue of the fact that a set of his orders was lost the Union Army finds his lost orders and catches him near Boonesboro, Maryland, and ends up in a huge fight on the 17th near Sharpsburg, Maryland. So Sharpsburg is this little village, about 700 people today. This is where I do my research and where my tours are held. The battlefield is to the east, north, and south of this little village, and that's where the majority of the fighting took place. But Sharpsburg itself was a place for the reserves for the Confederate Army. Many generals had headquarters there, and many of the orders that ended up being troops afield were issued from Sharpsburg. Sharpsburg was shelled for 2.5, 3 days by the Union Army to try to drive Confederates from their hiding places. And we're lucky in Sharpsburg. I look at myself as an advocate for the people of the town more than either side. There were no citizens killed during the bombardment of Sharpsburg. So, yeah, I've been on this now since 1983. I was a military historian. Well, I won't say military historian. I'll say a Sharpsburg Battle of Antietam historian. And at a young point in my life, took another direction. And I had to know more about the people's lives. I wanted to know, what the citizens experienced. And that's, to me, a very real story. They're caught in the middle. They didn't ask for a conflict to happen in their backyards and amongst their houses and streets and alleys, and they suffered through it. The consequences for them were very real. After the battle, they came home a day or two after the battle. They found their homes filled with dead, dying Confederate soldiers. They took the dead. The citizens buried many of the dead themselves. I mean, who's going to bed in that house, right? And you come home from a couple days and you've got corpses scattered around your house or in your bedroom, in your kitchen. And they took care of business and, buried these soldiers of both sides around the town. And then, this is, again, September 1862. The farms were destroyed. This is a small local farming community. They rely on each other. They rely on the produce that's growing in the fields, and all of this is gone and destroyed. And Sharpsburg made it through the winter only by virtue of the support of other communities that didn't have their food crops destroyed. But on top of that mess of starvation taking place, you had two other dynamics. One, you had epidemics sweeping through the town: typhoid, cholera, typhus, scarlet fever. And of course, the other things that come with large-scale military invasions. You've got dysentery. You've got 100 people or so dying in the town. And you've got the farmers now who are in the spring of 1863 are going to go back to work. They're going to go back putting crops in the field. And what are they doing? 30% of the ordnance that fell from these cannons on both sides didn't explode until a plow touched it, until a young man would pick it up and take it home and do something silly with it, like beat it with a hammer or drive a chisel into the fuse or throw it into a wood fire. All of these things happened. And so there was an effect on the citizens, even though I can say with a smile on my face that no one died during the battle. The carnage for the citizens is probably in the neighborhood of 115 to 120, something like that, in the aftermath of the battle.
They were all collateral, but still important people to think about.
Exactly. Just because the armies are gone doesn't mean this isn't a catastrophe related to something that the military foisted upon these people. So, yeah, I can get carried away with that, Dan. Sorry.
No, you're fine. People have to understand the cost of war. What we see on TV
100%.
Going over in Ukraine or wherever is not the true cost.
100%, Dan. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
So this battle comes in, both sides fight. You say really both sides lost between the numbers and all of that. Who actually claimed victory there?
So that's a really good question. Military historians will tell you that this is a tactical draw. I'll go with that.
Okay.
Abraham Lincoln was he needed a victory. He needed a Union victory. And he'd been sitting on this idea to emancipate free slaves in jurisdictions that were at war with the United States. And Antietam, Sharpsburg, that battle gave him the victory, in his opinion, to go ahead and initial the first draft of the Emancipation Proclamation, September 22nd, 1862, to become effective January 1, 1863.
Were they raising black troops at that time, like they did in Massachusetts?
Well, it wasn't as active a thing in 1862. It became significantly more active after that point in the war.
Okay. And Maryland would have been a northern state, considered a northern state. Was there a lot of Confederate sympathizers there?
So Maryland was complex geographically. You did not have, let's say, in Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore, you did not have large-scale plantations with hundreds of enslaved. There was one here in Washington County that enslaved about 300. And of course, I would have to say that is significant. But if there were enslaved persons here, they were mostly to the order of 2 or 3 on a single farm or in a single household. So that's Western Maryland. Western Maryland did not support Lincoln in the presidential election of 1860. It supported an alternate candidate named Breckinridge. But when you get to the Baltimore area, Baltimore was a hotbed for the support for the Confederacy. And early in the war, April 1861, troops were being shuttled to Washington, D.C. because the new president was going to take office, and they felt the need to, they had states that already had seceded. And so they started shuttling federal troops down from the Northeast to Washington, D.C. To get there, they came down on trains from the Northeast and through the state of Maryland until the governor of Maryland went to the president of the United States and ordered him not to bring his troops through the state of Maryland. So they had to disembark at the head of the Chesapeake Bay, not closer to Philadelphia than Washington, D.C., and get on boats and that way and shuttle down the Chesapeake Bay and up the Potomac River. So these are interesting things, to know about. You have a different way that, power is shared amongst the states and the federal government before the Civil War, and after the Civil War, that changes.
So at that stage of the game, I am assuming the president did not want to alienate Maryland by upsetting the governor.
Yeah, your first point was excellent, and that is, it was a northern state by virtue of the fact that the federal government isolated Washington, D.C. and encapsulated it. But the sympathies in that area from Baltimore down towards Washington, this is where major slaveholders were centered, and politically they were in support of the Confederacy. So in Baltimore in 1861, there were riots where federal troops were killed in the streets, and citizens were mown down too. It was a very a time of tremendous flux early in the war.
Was they having the issues with one side raiding the other side's armories? I know that happened in St. Louis. It's a couple of places.
So, the great one, of course, is, precedes the war, and that is John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry. Now, Harper's Ferry is 12 miles from Sharpsburg, and to the south. So that's the big one. If you want to talk about other raids, significant raids in this area around Sharpsburg in particular, there was This is after the war has started, and it's not they're not for armaments, but there was the 43rd Virginia Battalion, also known as Mosby's Rangers, John Singleton Mosby. The Gray Ghost is their leader. They were kind of a guerrilla warfare group that executed raids into Maryland, into the river towns. Now, the river towns had a canal flowing along them from Cumberland to Washington, D.C. This canal is called the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. A good bit of tonnage of all kinds of things are hauled through there, particularly coal and apples and things like that. But what it meant to the Confederates was you needed mules to pull these barges through the canal. And in Sharpsburg, about half the captains of the canal boats lived in Sharpsburg, which means when they went home for the day, they didn't leave their mules tethered up near the river. They came home with them. And so consequently, we had Mosby's Rangers coming across the river to steal the mules, which they did in abundance. Now, other towns too, local towns, Williamsport, Brunswick, just to name two others, were under constant threat of these raids from John Singleton Mosby.
So they were just damaging the supply lines.
They were, yeah, well, in effect, they could shut down the canal, and they tried to other ways to do that. Remember, cities at that time, Washington, D.C. in particular, was not full of office buildings and paper shufflers, right? Like anything that you had in the times of the American Civil War, anything that you had was handmade by somebody, and probably made by somebody not too far removed from you, okay? Somewhere in your town. So there were mills, of course, and there were fabricators of blacksmiths, etc. All these things would have been made not too far from you. If they could shut off the C&O Canal from bringing coal into the factories of Washington, D.C., they not only keep their homes cold, but they shut down their factories too.
That makes sense. Okay. So how was the people at Sharpsburg dealing with all of this at that time? This would have been after the battle, right?
After the battle. Well, so I've been talking so far pretty much about the setting up to the time that the war breaks out. Once the battle comes to Sharpsburg, the direction of the war is different for the town. Let's get back to the politics of it for a second.
Okay, yeah, please.
The town is about 65% in favor of Lincoln, even though they didn't support him during the election, and about 35% pro-Confederacy. But what it meant, you take a small town like Sharpsburg, where everybody's related, right? It's a very small town, 1,200 people. The families are all intermarried. John Brown comes to town in 1859, conducts his raid, is hung in December of 1859. And now families are torn apart. This is when, your brother, your relative looks at this differently politically than you do, and it's not over the issue of slavery per se. It's over the issue of whether or not slaves were owned. That might be very fine hair splitting, but most of these small households did not own slaves. They did not, or owned very, very few. About 25% of the population of Washington County in 1860 was either enslaved or free black. And we end up September 17th, 1862 with this consequential meeting here that left its imprint on Sharpsburg. And this has been my, research since 1983. I've done nothing but pursue the interests of the citizens of the town, what their stories were. A lot of them are written down, but a lot of them are hand-me-down stories from generation to generation. And then lo and behold, during the process of looking at those and hearing about those, little actual true history comes to play. And I can give you an example of that, if you will. There was a family called the Rohrbach family that lived near the south end, on the south end of the battlefield during the battle. Their house was taken over by the Union and used as a field hospital. That family's name was Rohrbach. They had a bridge that was right below their farm. I say they didn't own it. The bridge was called the Rohrbach family bridge. And it's the bridge that is today known as the Burnside Bridge. It's a famous landmark on the battlefield. It took General Ambrose Burnside about 6 hours to get across there instead of the hour that was estimated early in the day. And the Rohrbach family's home goes into use as a field hospital for many months. And many soldiers literally they rotted to death. Their gangrene, their flesh rotted away. And Mrs. Rohrbach decided it was time for her husband and his brother, who were twins, to retire. Henry was her husband. Jacob was her brother-in-law. Jacob's not married. Henry is. And they have a granddaughter named Ada, 5 years old. Well, Martha finds a house in Sharpsburg to move to. And the Rohrbach brothers retire. They sell the farm. They move into Sharpsburg. And Jacob takes up this alternate life. He's now free to not have to get up as early. He's not farming. He's trading horses. And he carries 2 wallets with him, one with Confederate money, the other with Union money. And he takes up a wild lifestyle, Dan. I want to tell you, he takes up partying. He takes up gambling. He takes up drinking and smoking. And he comes home really late at night, sometimes maybe 10 o'clock. And when he comes home, he locks his horse in a stable in his backyard, and he goes to bed, which is up a staircase right inside this door, the kitchen door to the back at the back of the house. And as he goes up to bed peacefully one night, July 4th, 1864, a couple hours later, men of Mosby's Rangers show up to steal his horses, or his very fine horse. We're not sure which, whether it was one or more than one. And they bust into the kitchen door, which they think they're doing surreptitiously. And they get into this dark kitchen. It's midnight. They're bouncing around. They're bouncing into tables and chairs. And Henry hears this commotion. And Henry comes down the stairs into the kitchen to confront them. And he sees them, and he's incensed about this. What's going on? Why are you in my house? They say, well, we're here to steal Jacob's horse. And they say the key should be hanging here. They had this intelligence about where he hung the key. And they say, the key's not there. We need the key. And Henry says, well, Jacob probably has it. And they scream at him, where's Jacob? And Henry says, he's probably in bed. I'll go get him. Instead, they knocked Henry to the ground, and they thundered up this staircase. They get to Jacob's bedroom. It's right at the top of the stairs. They kick open the door, and Jacob sits up in bed very quickly. And one of these guys has just enough light to be able to see him, pulls a gun, and shoots and kills him. We know these details. We know them factually. They are recorded by the town surgeon, a guy named Dr. Augustus Biggs. His notes say that Jacob Rohrbach was killed at midnight on July 4th, 1864. That's the background. But what we know is this: for generation after generation of generation, that family, that house stayed in the same family. The lineage didn't change until about 35 years ago.
Wow.
And during the course of that family continuing to live in this house, they were constantly awakened by the sound of bootsteps crashing up this staircase in the house. It was inside the kitchen. Come in the kitchen, up the stairs. And they're disturbed by this. They're so disturbed, Dan, that they take the staircase out. They remove the staircase, but they left open the landing on the second floor. That's kind of treacherous, right? Yep. You got a hole in your ceiling or a hole in the floor, depending on how you're looking at it. They thought the sound of the bootsteps would stop. It did not. It did not stop. So they said, well, let's finish the job. And they patched that over, and the bootsteps still continue to this day. They continue to this day. This is a very fine bed and breakfast in Sharpsburg. It's called the Jacob Rohrbach Inn. The owners are friends, and they do not promote or try to hide this story. They do nothing about it.
Okay.
They won't go out of their way to tell you the story unless you ask them. Then they'll graciously tell you. I know the couple, and Chris, the innkeeper, male innkeeper. I love him. He's got a great sense of humor, and I'll often ask him if he's heard the Bootsteps, and he'll say, "No, Mark, I haven't heard the Bootsteps, but if you come and spend 3 nights here during our off season, I'll make sure that you hear the Bootsteps."
Wow.
Which I kind of like,
Yeah.
I like a prank. But no, we end up with people on our tours, right? Our scheduled tours are on Saturday nights. And here we are stopping by the inn. I'm going to tell the story. And I can tell by seeing the faces of the people, which ones now I'm putting 2 and 2 together. I can tell who's staying in this inn because they're interested, in this presentation. Because they know nothing about this, right? Until I get to the crucial part. But it's also a time for me to learn. Every summer, as I do, I hear from patrons who are staying at the inn that they were awakened in the middle of the night, the previous night, by the sound of these Bootsteps crashing up the staircase. So still
that's awesome. So, hey, Mark, would you hold on for just a second? I have to run off and do a quick commercial, and then we'll tell some more about the ghosts of Sharpsburg.
Absolutely.
Be right back. Wow, can you imagine that? Just trying to get some sleep and hearing the stomping up the stairs that don't even exist anymore. Residual, probably, but still, it's exciting to know. And there's other things, I guess, it's kind of exciting to know. And let's check out a couple of those and see what you think.
The Onyx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Onyx Network website at onyxnetwork.com. That's onyxnetwork.com. The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from Onyx Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com.
All right, friends, I need to talk to you about Onyx Network, but we're going to hold that off until the end because I want to get back to Mark. The first ghost story, Mark, was incredible. What else do we have? I know you talked about a couple of Germans who were fighting there.
Yeah, so it's just evolved over the past couple years. We've had a story about a black dog at the Antietam National Cemetery that I first keyed on based on the several lectures that I heard, historical lectures by, I'm going to say, the dean of all Sharpsburg Civil War researchers, Antietam Civil War researchers, a reverend, retired reverend, who's been at this a long time. He's written so many books about the battle, and he's just a lovely soul. But he often speaks about Werner von Bichel, who was at the time of the war breaking out in April 1861. He lived in Madison, Wisconsin, but he was from an area of Germany or France, depending on how you look at it historically. Today, it's a part of Germany called the Alsace-Lorraine area, and this area has been, as I said, a disputed German-French border for a long time. And he had come to the United States unmarried, became a successful businessman in Madison, and very respected member of the German community, of which was substantial German community. There he is. Not the best picture. If anybody has a better one, please share with me. Werner von Bichel. And Bichel took command as a captain of a company in the 6th Wisconsin, a famous fighting unit that's part of what is known as the Iron Brigade, right? And as these men are in training, one day they start to now they're all German, right? They speak German. This is their primary language. They're firing their muskets. They're learning to operate these muskets, and they see this bear on the edge of a forest, and they want to kill the bear. And Werner von Bichel tells them, no, don't shoot the bear. They're confused. They don't know why. Bear hunting in Germany would have been a very, very popular sport, except for one thing. There were no bears. They'd been hunted to the point where they were incredibly rare. So Bichel wants to protect this bear, and they're screaming their heads off that they want to shoot the bear. You know what the German word for bear is, Dan?
No, sir.
It's bear.
Okay.
They're yelling at him, we want to shoot the bear, and he's refusing their orders. He walks across this open field towards this bear, and it turned out it's not a bear at all. It's a Newfoundland retriever, right? And instantly this dog becomes attached to him, and it's what there we go. It's what I call a Velcro dog. It goes everywhere that he goes. They are completely inseparable. According to some people, he was able to teach this dog to sit on its hindquarters and raise a paw up over its eye when a soldier on horseback would ride by. Well, the morning of September 17th, 1862 has an unfortunate end to it, and that is that both of them were killed in the early morning assault to try to take the area around the Dunkard Church, a famous landmark on the battlefield.
Okay.
Werner von Bichel was shot by 12 bullets right in the chest, about 150 yards or so from the church. His men had to fight on. Their objective is to take this landmark, but the dog stayed behind. The dog stayed with Werner von Bichel, and eventually his men who were trying to get to the Dunkard Church run out of ammunition, and they start to retreat. And when they retreat, they pass Werner von Bichel's dead body in the road, and the dog's body is draped across his, and the dog is also dead. And they swear they will come back and they will bury them together. And they did. They came back the next day during a lull, an unofficial truce. They retrieved their bodies and they buried them together on the battlefield. That was 1862. 1865, 1866 is when the Antietam National Cemetery was being created. The town had a horrible problem. They had dead bodies in every field. And Dan, these bodies were not buried deeply into the ground, right? Mm-hmm. And now weather has had its effect, and the bodies are literally on the surface. Everywhere you go around Sharpsburg for about 10 years, you can see the remains of Union or Confederate soldiers. Well, Union for a shorter time, because that cleanup starts in earnest in 1866. Werner von Beschell's body and the dog's body are taken and they are buried in the Antietam National Cemetery. And from that day forward to this day, people often see this large curly-haired black dog in the cemetery. In the cemetery, it has been known to be kind of a siren call towards other dogs that live in houses around the cemetery to kind of entice them to come into the cemetery. And a lot of these residents who live in the area of the cemetery, when their dog disappears, they know exactly where to go to retrieve their dog. They go into the Antietam National Cemetery, they find Werner von Beschell's grave, and that's where their dog is, generally laying across the grave. Now, I got to add something to that. I have to add something to this, Dan, because there's another factor at play here. If you go to Werner von Beschell's grave, there's 4,700 graves in the Antietam National Cemetery. If I sent you there and said, find Werner von Beschell's grave, you would hate me, right? It's 11 and a half acres, right? His, though, is fairly not difficult, right? The officer's section is just inside the front gate, not deeply into the cemetery, and it's in long, long rows. And his grave is in the front row of the first row, okay? So you can see it from when you walk in the main path and you find the officer section, look to your left, all of a sudden, down about halfway down this row, you're going to see a grave that is marked with American flags stuck in the ground all around it, okay? I don't know whether a dog would be interested in these American flags or not, but I do know this. The people who go there to visit that grave leave dog treats across the top of Werner von Beschell's grave. So go look for your dog there first if your dog is lost.
That's pretty cool. All right. And you sent me another German, I believe.
Yeah. You hit on something that I like to emphasize. There's two things. One, I like to emphasize that war is a terrible thing with unbelievable consequences. And, the American Civil War is no different than any other war. There are periods in our history where we become ripe for this. We want this. We feel entitled to have to smack somebody down. We've got to show our swagger somehow. And there are periods in history that are marked by that, right? And then the reality sinks in. This is the story of the Red Badge of Courage, if anybody has read that book, And the other thing is that I like to drive in, and I do. There were so many immigrant soldiers who fought for both sides. Most people are not aware. We have Irish brigades. People think of New York, they think of Boston, they think of Philadelphia, and they're right. There were Irish brigades from there, but we had Irish brigades from Charleston, South Carolina, and New Orleans too, right? But so I like to use the stories of these foreign soldiers who came here and fought. And in the case of Harris von Bork, who you just referred to, in his case, he came from Germany during the war because he wanted to experience warfare. There was nothing going on in Germany. There he is. Look at this gigantic handlebar mustache.
I like that. Yeah.
Isn't that incredible? He comes from Prussia. Germany's not even a country yet. He comes from Prussia, ends up in Charleston, South Carolina. This guy is 6 feet 7 inches tall. He's 27 years old. He's not married. And he gets to Charleston and he can speak English. He can write English. He's got an education. And he says, I want to enlist, and I'm a cavalry soldier. And they say, you need to get to Richmond. He gets on the train. He goes to Richmond and he checks into a boarding house there. And when he speaks to the owners of the boarding house, I want to sign up. I want to get involved. And they say, well, you're a cavalry officer. You should meet Jeb Stuart. He's the head of Robert E. Lee's cavalry. And he says, oh, okay. How do I do that? And then they say, he lives 2 doors from here. He was home hosting a party, right? This is May of 1862. Harris von Bork literally goes over, knocks on the door, sits down and has an interview with Jeb Stuart, General Jeb Stuart, and Jeb Stuart brings him in, makes him a cavalry officer, rank of captain, gives him adjutants to interpret his orders. And through the summer of 1862, there were cavalry engagements throughout the Shenandoah Valley. Okay, just from Hagerstown all the way down deep into Virginia. That's the Shenandoah Valley. And there are these running cavalry battles, and he is wounded 3 times. But he ends up, this man right here, Harris von Bork, our hero, ends up in Sharpsburg on September 15th, 1862. And he meets the wealthiest man in Sharpsburg, who is Dr. Jacob Grove. And Dr. Grove invites him. Dr. Grove is taken by him. This guy's charming. He's very well-spoken. And he's 6 feet 7 inches tall. My goodness. And Harris and Dr. Grove's got 4 daughters between the ages of 16 and 20. This, and he's making plans already. So Harris von Bork goes to breakfast the next day in the Grove household, and he entertains the 4 daughters for hours by reading to them from his journal and his exploits. And you can tell from their memoir, their letters, and the family recounting this visit that they were taken. They were very smitten with him. And there is a presence still in Sharpsburg to this day of Harris von Bork. It started in the 1920s, according to 2 women who came on our tour. They came to hear if we were telling any stories that they knew, because they grew up in Sharpsburg, and they wanted to know, were we telling the stories that they heard? And we weren't. But they gave us this one, and they gave us another one. Their father had come here from Germany, and they were born. He came around 1870. He was 10 years old. They're born in the 1920s, right? So their dad's 60 years old, and they're late in life kids for him. And they start to hear in Sunday school these stories being shared about this strange figure who rides a white horse. 1920 Sharpsburg, rides a white horse with a long gray coat and white leather riding gloves with this giant handlebar mustache and beard. They called the older kids told these 2, the 7 and 5-year-old, told them, "This is the Mitten Man. You need to look out for the Mitten Man." And they're like, well, why should we look out? And he's like, the Mitten Man is looking for children who have misbehaved. And if he hears of one, he doesn't even have to see them. If he hears of one, he'll pop out from under your bed at nighttime, and you won't know he's there until he puts your finger in his mouth or a toe. And if you've been bad and he sneezes, he might take the whole finger or toe off. Right? So there's a lot more to this story. It has, there's elements of, are you like your parents in it? And I think most of us have some quality that we eventually look back on and say, I know where I got that, right? But their father, when they first revealed to their father, there's this 60-year-old man, they're 7 and 5. When they first revealed that they were interested in seeing the Mitten Man, he shouted at them across the dinner table, "There is no such thing as the Mitten Man. You will never speak of the Mitten Man in this house ever again." And they learned that struck them so deeply. They did not talk to their father about the Mitten Man until he was on his deathbed. When he's on his deathbed, they go to him, and the older sister, who they agreed, she's the loud, mouthy one, right? And she's going to ask her father. And he's literally on his deathbed, near death. And the older sister says, "Dad, you have to tell us. Now, we've got to know. Why couldn't we talk about the Mitten Man?" And he broke into tears. And they thought he was going to die in their presence. Well, they got him to recover. They left. The younger sister said, "You are never doing that again. Don't do that." And the older sister agreed. But they knew they had to come back the next day, and they did. And the older sister blurted it right out again. "Dad, come on, you've got to tell us. Now's the time. Let us know." And you know what he told them? He told them that when he was a lonely 10-year-old boy in Germany, or excuse me, in Sharpsburg, that didn't speak English, the only people he could speak to, I'm going to let that bell ring out if it's okay.
Go right ahead.
He told them that when he came to town, he needed a caretaker, not a babysitter, not a daycare provider. He needed that caretaker. He went someplace where there were 3 young women who would be his caretakers, and they all spoke German. You know who they were? They were 3 of the 4 Dr. Grove's daughters who never married, and they had seen this guy in their house. They had seen Harris von Bork, and they told the young scared German boy, "Oh, that's whom we call the Mitten Man, because he rides his horse through town and he looks you right in the eye and says, 'Gott mit uns,' 3 German words." And their little Sharpsburg ears, all they can think is he's selling mittens, he's selling gloves. Right? And they told him this. The Mitten Man still rides, and he's the one looking for these disobedient children. Scared the heck out of this little boy, right? He's in a foreign country, in a town where he doesn't know anyone, doesn't speak the language, and he goes home that night. The boy goes home that night, and the father says, "It's time to go to bed." And he says, "Do I have to, Dad? Do I have to?" And he "Oh my gosh, I've been disobedient." And the father says, "You go to bed right now." He's a stern German man. "You go to bed right now." The boy goes upstairs, 1.5-story house, goes to bed, or goes to go to bed. The light is still on. The father senses the light is still on. He says, "Blow out the candle. You must go to bed now." And the boy says, but do I have to?" And the dad loses it again. Boom, 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 boom. He's up the stairs. Now he's sitting and he's hovering over his son who's crying. And he says, "What is wrong with you? You are a boy. You should not be crying." And the boy says, "But Dad, the Mitten Man will get me tonight." And the father launches into him and says, "There is no such thing as the Mitten Man. You will never speak of the Mitten Man in this house again." And this is the type of thing I'm talking about. We carried it forward, right? And they carried it forward. I love this story. Truthfully, Dan, I don't know. Is this folklore? Is this legend? Is it myth? Is it paranormal? I don't know. I think there's great lesson in it, right? For why are we carrying this baggage around anyhow? Where did it come from? How did we get it? In this case, it happens to tie into an actual historical presence in the town. As far as I can tell, the last real sighting of Harris von Bork riding his horse in Sharpsburg was sometime in the 1930s. Right, this is not a recent thing, but it sprung into the 1920s, continued into the 1930s. I just haven't met anybody who could share a more updated story with me.
Okay, sounds. We got one more picture, real briefly, because I'm about to run out of time here, Mark. But what happened?
So of course, we're lucky. Our patron shares photographs with us. This is one from, I think it's a July 4th tour. Probably, I'm going to say 2016, 2017, something like that. Julia, my wife, she often presented during tours. She does it now. She does tarot readings during the tours. But this is supposed to be a single image of my wife in uniform in this spooky alley that we call the Children's Alley. Has some great stories from this tour that we do called the Children's Alley. It's a 2-hour-long tour. We only do it in October every year. It's so much fun. But this image, is just one of those things. What happened here, And I am no expert on digital photography or any type of photography, Dan. So I just take what I see at face value and say, what happened here? I don't know. I don't know how this image became this way. It certainly is just interesting, and I thought I'd share it with you. Yeah.
So the tours, you do 3 different tours.
Correct.
You do year round.
That is correct. Yeah.
And your wife does tarot readings.
She does. Yeah, she does. So our tours started out. We're actually in our 16th season now, and we started out with a tour that was 3 hours long, Dan, 3 hours, and it was $6, and then I realized people might have something else they want to do on Saturday night, and I might have something else I want to do on Saturday night. So we broke that tour into 2 tours, and since then have accumulated enough stories to add a 3rd tour, which is the Children's Alley Tour. I'm sorry, it's called Graveyard Cemeteries and Ghosts of Sharpsburg. So we have those 3. We alternate. We generally start in March each year with scheduled tours, but we do private tours all year long, and we have a schedule that we put together in the springtime that runs through November. So almost every Saturday night from early spring in up to and through Thanksgiving in November, that's when we're on the streets almost every Saturday night.
Okay. And you tell the stories you've told tonight, plus quite a few extras.
Oh my gosh! Sure. Okay. So, yes. See, I refer to Sharpsburg as America's most haunted Civil War town. Right. Okay. I'm so happy to be a guest on your program, and I get feedback from other people who say, "No, Mark, no, it's Gettysburg. Well, Gettysburg's a bigger town, right?" Mm-hmm. Dan, I could take you on. I could do a ghost tour in Sharpsburg without leaving a certain position of the town, right? I could just point. I could just go like this, Mm-hmm. But it's nicer to get around and walk and look at things, And I've been on tours in Gettysburg, and I love them. I've had many good times, but there can be a substantial amount of moving, from place to place in town. So I'm going by the compactness of the size of the town and the stories per square acre of when I do that. I'm not being dismissive of Gettysburg's history. No,
of course not. But you've got more than your share for that small town.
I do. Yeah. I sure do. Yeah.
And people can get to you by sharpsburgtours.net.
Yeah, that's what you'll land on our tour schedule page, where most of the information is. Of course, we've got bios posted too, and we've got tarot information there. And we have, you can buy our book from that page. Yeah, there's our logo. All that right at sharpsburgtours.net.
I forgot about the book, and I thought I had a copy of it up here. I swear I did, but now, oh, wait, there we go.
There we go. Published by the History Press, Charleston, South Carolina. They do a nice Haunted America series. And we were lucky to, collaborate with them and produce this. It's been 10 years now since that came out. I'm under agreement with them right now, and I'm finishing a text that'll probably be called Ghosts of Antietam Battlefield. That's all in their control, but that would be a perfect name for it. And that will probably be out next August or September. I'm really happy. I'm getting right to the final edits on that.
Now, are you going to have a chance to do a tour of the actual battlefield rather than the town?
So the answer is no. So the National Park Service regulates who can present tours on the battlefield, and they grant that exclusively to Antietam Battlefield guides. So it's all military history that you will hear on their tours. So out of respect for the battlefield, out of respect for the authority of the National Park Service, I don't go anywhere near their grounds. And if I am anywhere near them, I am as respectful as I possibly can. I do want to say one thing, though. The one thing I like about this book so much, Dan, is that the stories that are in it are ones that are shared with me by people who work for the National Park Service. So they will not even have a book in their bookstore that mentions or references ghosts.
Really?
And I'm proud of the historical work that I've done. And I'm pleased because, in the way I look at what I do, I'm keeping alive stories that would otherwise be forgotten. Yes. About people whose sacrifices were very important. there's a story that I tell about this Union drummer boy named Charlie King who died when he was 13 years old. Poor Charlie. But Charlie has a presence, and Charlie has a presence around Sharpsburg and also at the battlefield. And,
Okay.
I'm pleased as punch to be able to tell his story.
All right. Well, when you get that book out, when did you say it would be coming out? The new one?
Probably, I would say next August or September.
All right. Well, we'll get you back on here because I want to hear those stories.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Would love
Mark,
that.
would you hold on here for just a second? I'm going to go say my goodbyes, and then I'll talk to you some more, okay?
All right, Dan. Sounds great.
All right. Thanks for coming on. We do appreciate the good stories and the history that goes with it.
Anytime.
I always tell people without history, it's just a campfire tale.
That's so true.
Talk to you in a minute.
Okay.
All right, friends, you heard it. And if you don't get down to Sharpsburg, I'm planning a trip there eventually because I'm really into Civil War. And you all know that. I've been to several, like I said, General Harney's mansion and that battlefield in Kansas. There's one in Missouri I went to. There was just so much history. And it's so important right there. Hey, but I am running out of time. I do want to remind you all to join up with the UNX Network. Get on to unxnetwork.com. Go down the first page a little bit. You'll get to become a member. And if you're a member, you get access to the blog. And they send stuff out all the time. You get the newsletter, which comes out, I think, about every day. We're talking about some of the shows and some of the things going on. I know when the blog was really hitting big, when the Tic Tacs were being seen by the U.S. Navy, when there was Mothman being seen again, this time in Missouri. So whenever there's some good story, it comes out, and you'd be one of the first to see it. Also, you get the magazines. These magazines are written by fools like me, as well as for some really top-notch writers. This one on the left, I had a story in it about the battleship North Carolina. Very, very haunted. They fall into anything. You might have time travel, cryptids, conspiracy, all kinds of stuff. I got some articles on conspiracy that would knock your socks off. This one came out just recently, and I had a big article on that, on haunted dolls. This one, I had a big article, the last one, of the Devil's Diner. It's a restaurant down in Missouri that I ghost hunted many times. It was crazy, crazy haunted. And, it got hit by a tornado this year, and it's pretty much gone now. So there won't be any more ghost stories to tell there. But anyway, all of this is in the magazine. It comes with being a member. You need to join up and check us out. And, again, don't forget, Sharpsburg Civil War Ghost Tours. And I'm going to go ahead and back out of here so you folks stay cool or warm because it's turning spring. Watch the ghosts. I know what you're looking for, just like me. And I guess most important of all is to stay spooked. Good night.